did, right? Like, look at your budget, you can tell the heart of a person if you look at their tax return, right? How much have they given? How much they receive? And then how much taxes have they paid, right? I think you can really tell if they can increase that beyond the 10%, or how many of us are less than 10%, right? You can tell the heart, from looking at the 1040. Any questions about that piece? God owns it all. Basic foundational principle. Number 2, contentment is a choice. Contentment is a choice. This idea of contentment is a hard thing to do, obviously, right? But we've been programmed by the media that's out there. We've been programmed to always want more. It's never enough. As soon as you get that salary, get that job, get that salary that you set, okay, what's next? As soon as you get that house that you want to buy, okay, what's next? As soon as you got that car, right? Okay, what's next? Right? It's never enough. Contentment is a choice. We have to choose to be content. Hebrews 13:5. Keep your lives free from the love of money, right? And be content with what you have, because God said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Money-wise? Yes, but this is a general term. Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Relationship, family dynamics, I will never leave you. Money as well, right? Now, what jumps out at you here in this verse?
The love of money.
Love of money. Love of money. Okay? So what does the Bible say about love of money? 1 Timothy 6:10. Right? For the love of money is the root of all evil. It's not money that's the root of all evil. Money is an instrument. My computer is an instrument. I can use my computer for evil if I wanted to. Right? The love of money is the root of all evil. Right? So you don't want to love money. Some people are eager for money and have wandered from their faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. A lot of this is self-harm, self-cause. Right? We created some of these griefs ourselves. There's another one. Paul, right? Paul is the one that actually, he's the one that can tell us what it's like to be content. He tells us this. I know what it's like to be in need. I know what it's like to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Right? So, contentment is a choice. It's not easy to do, but we want to make that decision every single day. Any questions about this? We often have to remind ourselves, right? If you lost your job, you're okay. You can be good. I'm content with what I got. If you have an extended period of financial woes, you're okay. You have friends who will take care of, who will help you, who will give you a lending hand. You're okay. You're good, right? It's not woe is me, right? You have to be content, whether you have plenty or whether you have nothing.
What is that? Like, I think of teens, we're bombarded with the outside world. I feel like we've got like another whole level of dope, like steroids of this.
Teens, oh, absolutely, yeah.
What are some things you have seen successful in helping them sit in that contentment and choose contentment?
Yeah, that's not easy, right?
Yeah.
Because teens they're malleable, right, at that point, right? So when they see something, they can be like, oh, that's kind of cool. I never knew I needed that,
Yeah,
but I
right,
did.
right. It wasn't on my brain.
Right. So it's constant conversation and modeling. I think modeling is really important, guys. You know, and we model, you know, and we try to model this with our kids. We've had plenty. We actually had nothing. You know, we know this path as well, right? So when we are at the top, when we're at the bottom, we try to model it to the kids. It doesn't really matter. need that stuff over there. You know, we're fine driving our 25-year-old Toyota, 2000 Toyota 4Runner, right? So it's totally good, we're good, right? So I think modeling, having conversations with the kids is really important. Like, do you really need the $250 pair of Nikes? You know? So contentment is a choice. Constant conversation with the kids. Third part is training that next generation. You asked that question, Sari, about training next generation. And this is one of the core principles, core mindsets that we need to have, right? I've met some clients who are just like, you know, we don't talk about money with our kids. They don't know how much we have, right? That's just not healthy. That's not healthy. They need to know. Now you want to have conversations with them to tell them, hey, don't burn this out outside the family, right? My dad makes this much, and you know, my mom just bought this. No. Don't share this outside the family. We're going to share this within the family. You know, here's the reason why we're sharing, so that you guys know what it means to be content, right? We can't. We're having trouble with the grocery bills this week, right? So we're going to cut back a little bit. You know, we're not going to go out to eat all that much. You know, that's just a choice. You know, it's healthier anyway at home. Right? So, so you want to train up the next generation. This is one of the basic principles. You have to understand this. And when I say next generation, you might not have kids, right? When the next generation are people who are around you, your circle of influence, right? People who might be in an earlier walk than you are. So that's the people that you want to influence, training up the next generation. Talk about Christ, talk about your walk, talk about the finances, right? Make sure that they understand these principles as well. It's important for us to train up the next generation, not just our kids, right? So, Proverbs 22:6, train up the children in the way that he should go. For when he is old, he will not depart from it, right? We talk to kids these basic principles. They haven't deviated yet. Right? And I'm definitely not under the illusion that they're not going to deviate. They will deviate. So we're going to have those conversations when they deviate. I deviate. I deviate probably multiple times a day, right? So we're going to have those conversations to make sure that they understand and get back on track. What are we training the next generation? There is the idea of financial literacy, right? You know, basic income, you know, basic budgeting, basic outflow, right? So there's the financial literacy piece, IRAs, retirement, what is all that stuff, right? There's that literacy. So you want to train them on the financial literacy, but you also want to train them on the financial wisdom, the wisdom part of it. So, which is what the Bible says, right? Which is what we're going through here. Remember, I haven't even shown you guys anything about budgeting, right? Any numbers. This is God's wisdom. This is what we need to be training about. So there is a difference between literacy, which is knowledge, and wisdom. Okay. I had I want to share a story about a client of mine. She recently widowed, and you know, she's talking about she's not in good health either, so she doesn't expect to live for another 1 to 5 years. So we're talking about, okay, what are we going to do with her assets? And so she decided that she wants to cut her only daughter off completely, because she's gone in a way that she doesn't like, and the question now becomes, okay, if you cut her off, what is her relationship going to be like with Jesus? Right? So that's a question you want to make sure you ask. How is that person's relationship? Is that going to make them closer to God? Is that going to make them run away from God? That's something, there's no right or wrong answer here, but you have to answer that question. That's a question that I posed to her. What is that gonna look like? And, she stewed on that for a couple of weeks. Next time we met, she said, I changed my mind. That's actually gonna make her run away from Jesus. I wanna give her a little bit something. I won't give her 100%, I'll give her a little bit something, right? So that she actually still understands, she will still understand why I'm giving away a big part of my estate and why I'm leaving her with what she has. Okay, so it's that is also part of the training next generation, because you want to make sure that they understand why they're not getting rid of 100%, and where your heart is. So, make sure I keep track of time here. So now, any questions about these 3 pieces of the foundational? Really, just foundational stones. You want to make sure these are set. Your mind is convinced and you're all bought in, all in. It's all his, right? Contentment is a choice, and we're going to train up the next generation. You're all in with this, right? Now we're going to build principles, actual financial principles on top of this. Okay? You have a question? No? Okay. Sorry. First one is spending less than you earn. I've talked to the kids. I went to Horizon Honor High School 3 weeks ago, and I said, I laid this out. I said, spend less than you earn. They're like, wow, that makes sense. Right? I'm like, but how many of you guys do that? No hands, right? And part of it is because they have a credit card. The credit card enables you to go negative. If you're just purely on cash, right, and you're putting things in an envelope, you will never go negative, because you're gonna go, oh man, that envelope's empty, right? You're never gonna go negative. The credit card will allow you to go negative, and that's a bad thing, right? So you do not want to spend more than you earn. Very basic principle, hard to do. This odds money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. I think we get the first part, right? You want to be, have integrity on how you earn money. The second part is about savings, right? Making sure that whoever gathers it little by little, step by step, discipline will get you to make it grow. The wise man saves up for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets. Again, the Bible's replete with this stuff. It's all over the place. About how to use money, and it's warning us, making sure we don't spend more than we earn, that we bring in. Second principle is avoiding the use of debt. Avoiding the use of debt. Who actually thinks getting into debt is a sin? Who doesn't think getting into debt is a sin? Who just doesn't? Getting into debt is actually not a sin. Getting into debt is not a sin. And I'll show you some passages where getting into debt is allowed in the Bible. So getting into debt is not a sin, but you have to avoid the use of debt as much as you can at all costs. Okay, the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. Proverbs 22:7. The borrower is a slave to the lender. Think about that a little bit, right? Makes sense, because why? If you're in debt, the first dollar that comes in, you need to pay that off, right? It's just like your mortgage. If you don't pay your mortgage for 3 months, they're gonna come after you, right? And all of a sudden your house is gone, right? If you don't pay your car debt, they're gonna come after you, and the repo guy is gonna be, hounding you, right? So that debt is the first thing that you need to pay. You're essentially mortgaging your future when you get into debt. You're promising to pay something in the future right? So that you're mortgaging the future now. You have less cash flow to use in your finances. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower, won't you first sit down and estimate the cost? Make sure you have enough to finish it. You want to plan, right? You want to save so that you have enough to pay for something that you want to buy. Right? If you need to buy something, let's just say the dishwasher breaks, well, you need to have an emergency fund on the side, right? To make sure you can dip into that emergency fund for when the dishwasher breaks. You want to make sure, you want to just get away from debt as much as possible. There is a difference. So the only really exception that we should make is real estate, right? A house, right? Because real estate increases in value. It makes sense for you to borrow some money, right, to get into debt so that you can have this asset which appreciates in value. It does not make sense for you to get into debt to buy a car. A car depreciates in value. As soon as you drive off the lot, you're 30% less that's worth, right? So what makes more sense? Does it make sense for you to get into debt for your business? Okay, that's something that we have to ask. What kind of business is it, right? Do you have assets on the side to back it up? Do not be the one who shakes hands in pledge and puts up security for debts if you lack the means to pay for it. Okay? Your very bed will be snatched from under you. Okay? If you don't have the means to pay for something, don't get into debt. Okay? Again, the only exception here is real estate, which does appreciate. You do gain in your equity. But if you're borrowing for a car loan and they call the loan tomorrow, you better have cash to be able to pay that off, right? Equity line is something that I think is okay, right? Because you have built up a certain equity. If you must, you can borrow from the equity, and if they call your loan tomorrow, you can be able to sell the house, and use the equity to pay off that debt. So you have to have the money on the side in order for you to get into debt. This is where one condition where the Bible says it's okay to get into debt. Okay, but you have to have the money to be able to pay that off. So that's why, for example, if you want to buy something, can I use my credit card to collect miles? I don't see anything wrong with that. Do you have the money on the side to be able to pay off your credit card? Yeah. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. So that's one condition where it's okay. But you want to make sure that you're calculating to make sure that you have the money to do it. Next one. Do not let no debt remain outstanding except for the continuing debt of loving one another. Okay? So this is in Romans. But again, this is the idea. Do not let any debt remain outstanding. Okay? So if you have debt, you want to pay that off as quickly as possible. Don't drag it out. Right? Pay that off as quickly as possible. If you get a bonus, right, put that money toward the debt and just pay it off. Right? Again, you should be able to have the money on the side to pay it off right away, right? But if you just pay it off as quickly as you can. Lastly, about debt, there is the idea of provision and protection. There's a careful balance between, we all need to walk between provision and protection. How much can I use the money to buy my way out of the problem, right? And how much should I be praying about the problem, right? So that God can get me out of the problem. So that's the difference. There's that difference between provision and protection. We want to make sure that we have that balance, right? If you have the money to pay off the problem, yes. But if you pay that off, you probably would have eliminated the possibility of God coming in to show you something amazing, right? So you can't always you shouldn't always buy your way out of the problem, is what I'm saying. There's a balance between the two, okay? Protection and provision. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I'm not understanding your concept there, provision and protection.
A lot of times when we are in situations, let's just say, my son gets into trouble, right? And he gets into trouble with law. And it's multiple times that he's gotten into trouble. And now he's back in jail, right? Now I have the money to go pay for the bond, right? But if I pay for the bond, would he really learn about this? So even though I have the money to pay for it, I'm trying not to pay for it. I'm gonna let him sit, suffer the consequences so that he learns the hard lesson about this, right? We can buy our way out of a problem in a lot of problems. We can. But is that the right thing to do? Right? Maybe if I let him sit in jail for a couple of nights, he will realize what he's done. He will actually get closer to God because he realizes what he's done. And his walk with God will grow that much more. Right? I'm not buying my way out for him. So that's one example. You want to have that careful balance. Sometimes God, should I pay this off? Should I help this person? Right? Maybe this person got into trouble because of irresponsible spending. Do you really want to enable that anymore? I don't know the answer to that, right? It's between you and God. But that's the balance between protection and provision. I want to save for my retirement. I need to have $5 million in my bank in order for me to be able to earn 5%, so that I can live on for the rest of my life. Okay? Is that protection or is that provision? That's probably protection. You're not trusting God that God will take care of you. Right? But then again, it's like, does that mean I shouldn't save? Right? Well, no. You still have to do your thing, right? So there is a balance, a careful balance. And I don't know what that is for you, but there's a careful balance that you need to have with your spouse. Right? It has to be together. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Building margin is this next piece. So, go to the end, you sluggard. Consider her way and be wise, which, having no captain, no overseer or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food. So you want to make sure that you're saving. You're not spending every single penny that's going on. You want to build a margin. What do I define margin to be? Margin is income minus expenses. Very simple. Income minus expenses, right, is whatever you have left over. That's the margin. You want to build that up. Build that up as much as you can, right? If you're negative, income minus expenses is negative both. We need to make sure that we're raising income, right? Yeah, if income minus expenses is pretty large, we need to have a different conversation. Right? What are we doing with this? Right? So, but you want to build margin. When you have a big margin, you can now do more. Not for yourself, for God. For God's purpose. But when the crop comes in, give a fifth to Pharaoh, and 4/5, so that in the 4/5 you may keep, so that as seeds for your field, you need as food for yourselves. Okay, so this is in Genesis when the famine came in, right? And Joseph was actually buying land from the people so that he could pay people to give them food so that they can survive the famine. Well, pretty much everyone ran out of land to sell to Pharaoh, to Joseph. And so Joseph said, hey, you know what, I'm gonna carve this out, you keep this land, you keep this land, you keep this land. So this is actually a form of tax. It's an example of tax. You keep this land, use this land here to harvest your food so that you guys can survive famine. But in exchange, I want you to give a fifth back to Pharaoh, right? So this is his way of collecting taxes so that he can create margin, right, for his property, his Egypt. The fourth one is setting goals and priorities. Okay, and the verse here is Philippians 3:14. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. So setting goals is biblical. We want to make sure we are setting goals. Whose goals? God's goals. Right? Whose plan is this? God's plan. Whose money? God's money. Right? So we want to make sure that we're setting goals. Does that mean that he doesn't want you to, have a retirement? Of course he does. Right? But actually, what is a retirement? That's a different conversation we can save for another time. What's retirement? Right? That's so we can talk about that later. But he doesn't. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have nice things, right? He wants you to be okay, but he wants you to use his money for his purpose. Are you doing that? Are we doing that? It's important because it's important to set these goals, and it's important to have a priority. Priority list. What needs to go first? What do we need to accomplish first? What's number 2? What's number 3? But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. Right? We want to seek God's kingdom. Whose goals? God's goals. Now, you guys heard of the treasure principle, right? Right? Don't store treasures here on earth. Right? So this is what it says here. This is Matthew 6. Do not lay out for treasures for yourselves on earth, where moth and rust can destroy, where thieves can break in and steal, but lay out instead for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust can destroy, and where thieves cannot steal or break in. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is a lamp of the body, so that if the eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? No one can serve 2 masters. Right? For either you will hate one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. This is the money principle, the treasure principle, right? Do not store up treasures here on earth. Instead, store up treasures in heaven. How do I do that? That's what I do with a lot of my clients, try to figure that out. How do we do that money exchange, currency exchange? How do we exchange into treasures in heaven, not on earth? So, very important for us to understand this idea that it's not he who has the most chess pieces wins at the end of the day. Right? We have to play a different game. Set your mind things on above, not here on earth. I go back to Rob Blue's quote as we talk about the treasure principle here, right? The use of God's given resources to accomplish God's given goals. We want to make sure that we're doing that. God's resources to accomplish God's goals. Last part. Generosity breaks the power of money. Okay? Money is very luring, right? It lures you. You can buy nice things with it. You can do a lot of, you can have great vacations with it. It's, none of those things are necessarily wrong per se, but if that's all your eyes are fixed on, that's bad, right? So how do you break the power of money? Generosity. Being generous is how you break the power of money. There's a long one. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant nor to put their hopes in their wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything in our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay themselves treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the upcoming age, so that they may take hold of life that is truly life. 1 Timothy 6, 16 to 19. I'm going to share some statistics with you guys. So, we here in the U.S., and you guys have heard Pastor Lynn say this many times, right? We're rich, right? You can be in a shelter, you're still considered rich on a global standard, okay? The median income of people in the U.S. is about $74,000. Median income for everyone in the U.S. is about $74,000 a year. Compare that with the median income of the rest of the world. Everyone ex-U.S. It's $10,000 a year. We're rich. Average net worth of someone in the U.S., net worth is overall assets minus your liabilities, any debt you have. Okay? Assets minus liabilities is overall net worth. Average net worth of a household in the U.S. is $192,000. Average net worth of everyone else, ex-U.S., is $20,000. Okay, we're rich. We, the U.S., we make up 4.2% of the global population. Yet, we make up 38% of millionaires in the world. We're rich. So this is for all of us, right? Whether we have millions in the bank or we don't, right? We're still rich. We're living in this environment. We're rich. So this is calling us. When we talk about how to be generous, we really try to focus on these four things, and it's the acrostic here being life. Okay, so L is labor. Use your time, use your labor. You can be generous with that, right? I is your influence. Who's your circle of influence? Do you have a name in the industry? That's your influence as well, right? That's how you are able to give your influence for God's purpose. F, finances, we've been talking about this. And E, your expertise. You're a CPA, and you're a craftsman, you're an engineer. Use your expertise to help, right, for free. This is how we become generous. It's not just about money. Generosity is about these four things. Now, we've laid the foundation, we've put in the support beams. The top, what goes on top are the two things that we measure, right? Your cash flow and your overall net worth. We talk about both, right? Your cash flow and your overall net worth. But when we talk about this, is how much is enough? And this is a question I want all of you guys to just think about. Go back and talk to your spouse, talk to your family about this. How much is enough? And look at them separately. How much is enough on a cash flow basis? Are you able to live on $100,000? Are you able to live on $50,000? Are you able to live on $30,000? Are you able to, or do you really need $150,000 to live on a year? Right? Again, there's no right or wrong. You need to answer that question within your family. Okay? You need to define that now for yourselves. Define that number for yourselves. Right? Because anything over and above that is what we can do for the kingdom. Define that number. Net worth. How much is enough? $1 million? Is that enough? $2 million? 10? If we use the 4% basis, 4 or 5% basis, live on, you know, the interest, it's like $5 million. You know, to have about $90,000 in interest. Is that enough? What about those NBA players? Right? Now we're talking about multi hundreds of millions. Is that enough? Make that decision now. If you can make that decision now, everything above and beyond. It doesn't mean that you stop at that point. It means everything above and beyond. Now you can actually do something good, something great, right, for the kingdom. Define those two numbers for yourselves. How much is enough? So that's actually pretty much it about this framework. You guys have that. You guys have all the biblical verses in there. Just a great piece to just kind of refer to sometimes to say, okay, this is the framework that we need to operate by. And if you guys have questions, you know, feel free to just reach out to me. I love to just talk about things. I'm kind of a geek at that. You know, I love to just talk about, you know, numbers and just ideas. And one of the things that I'm trying to do now is really help people to become just better kingdom builders. We figure this out, you know, we set up this framework, we figure out what the above and beyond is. Now, let's put that into something that you guys care about, that you guys love, right? That's for kingdom purposes. We all want to be kingdom builders. We all want to hear this verse at the very end, right? Well done. Well done. So, yeah, there are a couple other sheets here. So this sheet here, if you guys didn't get this, it's all on the table over there by my kids. It's just some interesting numbers for you guys to look at. It gives you tax brackets. So which tax bracket are you in? It gives you numbers on just exemptions, long-term capital gains. So there are different tiers for that. On the back are multipliers for R&D, so required minimum distribution for your IRAs. And then there are phase-out periods, phase-out levels as well on how much you can contribute to an IRA. If you make too much, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA or an IRA, actually. But there are ways around that, right? And so we can talk about that as well. There is perfect. This one, I mentioned I do go to high school sometimes and go talk to some kids. This is the one I use when I talk to kids. It's basically, you know, the money manifesto, and a lot of things that I talked about here are reflected here. So the 5 things that we talk about with the money manifesto for teens is number 1, live on less than you make. We talked about that. And number 2, the secret sauce to money success is time and discipline. Time and discipline. You're not looking to be able to get on a ground level for something like an NVIDIA, right? You know, those are once in a blue moon things. Time and discipline are the things that you can control. Okay, so that's what we tell the kids. Say no to debt. Again, you know, we talked about this here. Say no to debt. Number 4, generosity wins. Talking about that concept of generosity. Break the chain of money. And then number 5, we talked about there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. Sometimes you might get a windfall, you might get a big bonus, your business may be bought out. So these are good windfalls, right? And we can deal with those later, but not everyone can have that, right? And so, so there are no shortcuts. You just want to make sure if you don't get any windfalls, you're going through these things step by step. You're just doing what you need to do, and just be a godly, principled person with a steward with your money. So, with that, I'm going to open up for questions. 35. Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, ask a couple questions, sure.
Yes, sir.
So, I hear, but the rich don't do investing like we do. A lot of times they put their money in whole life policies and stuff like that. Is that what you have seen?
I'll answer this question in a different way. I'm not going to say yes or no yet. let me talk about the whole life policy first. Whole life policy is a great instrument for certain purposes, okay? And I think for most people who are not in certain circumstances, whole life policies are not great. If you're looking to use whole life policies to save us, for cash, so that you can borrow against it later, why don't you just save money on the side, put money in the market and let it grow and borrow against that money when you need to. Whole life policies have fees in them for that reason, to allow to create that flexibility for you. And a lot of times these fees are upwards of 2-3% of your overall whole life value, right? And so, having said all that, whole life policies are great instruments for certain individuals, particularly the rich, right? Because they actually use it to pay their estate taxes. So you can use whole life policies as a way to pay your estate taxes. Estate tax, if you have more than $11 million by the time you die, per person, you start owing estate tax. So most of us who are under 11 million, we're okay. But if you're over $1 million, and for a married couple, that's 22 million, if you're over that in your overall estate, you have to pay a lot of estate tax. And the escalation on the tax percentage is very fast. So you can very quickly get to 40%. You owe 40% in your overall estate upon your death. Okay? So whole life policy is a great tool to use for that purpose because it's tax-free by the time you die. You use that money to pay off the estate tax that you owe. So I'll get back to the original question now of the rich invest differently. And the answer is yes, but they all started the same place we started, right? Which is investing in the market, buying different assets, right? So that appreciable assets, so that they grow up in value, and then you kind of roll one over the other. You buy another one, and then you buy another one, and so that's how they get up there, right? But once you are up there, now you can afford to take a little bit more risk, right? And start investing things in like the hedge funds, which are highly speculative, right? But you can afford to risk some of those dollars if you lose it all. So now they can do more. But if they hit it big, the multiples, of that increase is tremendous, right? So yes, they do invest differently, but they all start the same place we started. So whole life policy, good tool for specific purposes. But if you're looking to buy life insurance for 98% of us, for life insurance, I would deter. There's not a whole lot of reason to use whole life, unless you're in a specific situation.
Your insurance agents will top you up. The commissions are ridiculous on that.
Ridiculous.
I did insurance for quite some time, and I'm still licensed. But we would always tell people buy term and invest difference. Never buy a whole life policy. Because, like you said, unless you're up in the millions.
People buy term and invest the difference.
Not very many, because their agent sells them a whole life policy.
Right.
So.
Yeah, the commission check on those whole life policies is, you're like, what? Oh my goodness. That's why they're pushing it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah. Other questions? Any questions for my kids?
Do you talk to your friends about it?
About like money?
Finances and stuff, yeah.
No.
How not to win friends and influence people.
I can say from my perspective now at college that I think a lot more people do talk about money. And I think, at least for me, it was very surprising to see how many people have such little foundation and knowledge on like the responsible use of money. And obviously, especially in college, money becomes a really big thing because you have so many people with so many different backgrounds, with so many different levels of money. A lot of people have these outliers have like really strange experiences already with crazy investments, like trading options already, like these really different things. So money does come up a lot, but I think all to say that all the conversations I've had about money have really made me appreciate like my solid foundation of like going back to being content with what I have and not trying to seek out everything, because it is hard. Like the more people you talk to, the more you realize, oh man, like I could really like spend my money on this, or like it would be really awesome if I could just like you do this to get more money so that I can do that more and get more money. But I think at some point it becomes very overwhelming, especially as a college student, to kind of keep that in your head, and you have to kind of say, okay, like those people that do that, those college students that do that, like they're outliers, they're different. Like I don't think there's really a reward in trying to be like those people. So
They're also being bombarded with messages, right? And so it's hard for them to come out of that, right? And be like, okay, I'm not gonna listen to this, and, that's junk, that's noise, and I'm focusing on this. It's hard when they don't have that foundation. And so it's important for all of us as parents to make sure that we have those conversations, because you wanna protect them, so that they have these earmuffs at their disposal, right, so that they know what to filter out.
Awesome. Well, thanks, George.
Yeah.
Thanks, George, for speaking today. And just here, George is part of our Cornerstone family. So if there's an area that maybe we want to dive into deeper down the road, I'm sure we could convince him to come back and spend some time with us. And I would encourage you to reach out to him. Just a couple of announcements. Yeah, we'll put his contact information out on the group meet, and your email and I think your business phone number's on your card.
Yeah, I got some business cards over there too.
Okay.
Get some cards,
Your
too.
QR code, does that?
Yeah, QR code goes to my website.
Okay.
Yep, so you can find me there too.
Oh, okay.
When I met George, I was intrigued because I asked him what his like vision was for all these sports he was doing, and he said something like he wanted to be like Dave Ramsey, like the next Dave Ramsey. But I also heard him say we could use credit cards, so he's like the cool Dave Ramsey. Because the other Dave Ramsey wouldn't let us use credit cards, so appreciate
Like
that.
how you're like.
That's gonna be your differential.
Right.
Dave Ramsey would use credit cards as long as you can pay it off, right?
Yeah, I'm part of the whole Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pro network as well, but, I love Dave. I love the things that he says, but you have to understand where his heart's coming from, right? So that piece of it is awesome. Some of the things he said with the credit cards, I do not agree with. There are ways to invest. I don't agree with those 4 buckets. He offers 4 buckets. I don't agree with that. It's not one broad stroke. It's personalized. It has to be personalized per situation. So, yeah, thanks for that.
All right, so a couple of announcements, and then we'll let you guys roll. So we're not meeting next week, so we're off for the holiday weekend, and then we'll get started back, I believe it's June 1st. And fingers crossed we'll be back in our normal room, but I'm not banking on anything. Construction's moving along, we'll see how quick that goes. But we'll be excited to get things started again on June 1st. And then we also have some family news that I wanted to share with you guys. We have a family who's transitioning away from our group to the next season of their lives. So I'm gonna have Serene Camden come up. We got something for Camden too. There's a story behind it. So it's a bag of peanuts.